Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to deconstruct a recent, pretty wide-ranging conversation with Elon Musk. We're going to follow a thread that starts with his vision for social media and takes us all the way to, well, the fundamental nature of our reality, using his own words to piece it all together.
Okay, let's just dive right in with this quote, because it really sets the stage for everything else. The idea here isn't about having all the answers. It's about whether we can expand our thinking enough to even ask the right questions in the first place. And that is the idea that's going to connect everything we're about to explore.
So, our journey starts on some pretty familiar ground, the social media platform we all know as X. But Musk's purpose for it, or at least the one he states, goes way beyond what you might think.
He talks about his acquisition of Twitter as something much bigger than just a business deal. For him, it was about creating a central, balanced place for a global conversation. A digital town square. He said his goal was to shift it away from what he saw as a very specific San Francisco-based ideology and bring it back to something more centrist.
But here's the thing. For Musk, this isn't just about posts and videos. That town square idea is really just the first step toward a much, much bigger and kind of philosophical goal for all of humanity.
So, how on earth does a social media platform connect to some huge leap forward for humanity? Well, this is where the vision starts to get a little more abstract, moving from a concrete product to a really big concept, the idea of a collective consciousness.
Musk basically argues that if we can dramatically improve the way information flows between all humans, think about it, breaking down language barriers with perfect auto-translation, for example, we could actually achieve a totally new state of being, a collective consciousness. And the way he explains this is actually pretty cool. Think about it. A single cell on its own, it can't really do much. But you get 30 trillion of them working together, and boom, you have a human who can think and talk and create. By that exact same logic, a single human can't build a spaceship, but a collection of humans, a collective, they can. It's this massive qualitative leap at each level of scale.
And this is the real key. The ultimate goal here, the whole point of achieving this collective consciousness, isn't just about building bigger and better things. It's about helping all of us, together, finally understand the universe, by first figuring out what questions we should have been asking all along.
All right, so what's the catalyst? What's going to trigger this huge leap in human potential? According to Musk, it's not going to be some slow, gradual change. Nope, he sees it as a force of nature.
He doesn't see the AI revolution as some gentle wave of progress that we can all adjust to. He literally calls it a supersonic tsunami, an overwhelmingly powerful, incredibly fast force that is going to completely reshape society as we know it.
And you can see the immediate impact of that tsunami right here. Musk makes this incredibly bold prediction. Within 20 years, maybe even as few as 10, work as we know it will become entirely optional. It'll be something you do as a hobby, just because you want to, not because you have to.
So you're probably asking, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible through a world of what he calls total abundance. He imagines a future where AI and robotics can produce literally any goods or service you can think of on demand. The only limit is no longer production, it's just human imagination.
Now, just pause and think about this for a second. In a world where anyone can have anything, what happens to the absolute foundation of our society? What happens to the economy? What happens to the very idea of money?
You see, Musk defines money in a really interesting way. Not as power, but as an information system. A database, really, for allocating human labor. But if robots and AI are doing all the labor, well, that system becomes totally obsolete, right? So what's left? The true currency, he argues, becomes energy. The raw, physics-based ability to do useful work.
So yeah, the bottom line here is that in this future of complete automation and total abundance, the entire concept of money just poof, it disappears. It just doesn't have a function anymore in a world where human labor isn't a scarce resource that you need to manage.
And this is where the chain of logic, from social media to collective consciousness to a post-money society, this is where it leads us down a really, really deep rabbit hole, to Musk's most speculative and, frankly, mind-bending question, which challenges the very nature of our existence.
And he's not just, throwing this out there as a what if. He actually states that the probability that our reality is a simulation is pretty high, and the logic he uses to get there is actually surprisingly simple.
I mean, just look at the progress of video games. 50 years ago, we had Pong. That's it. 2 rectangles and a square. Today, we have these massive, photorealistic, real-time worlds with millions of people playing at once. If you just extend that trend into the future, he argues it's basically inevitable that we will create simulations that are completely, 100% indistinguishable from reality.
And here's the statistical trap. Because if you can create one perfect simulation, you can create millions of them, maybe billions. So, what are the actual odds that we, right here, right now, just so happen to be in the one, single, original, base reality, instead of one of those countless simulated ones? The odds are really not in our favor.
And for the final, really provocative thought, Musk adds one more layer to this. He points out that when we run simulations, say for rockets or cars, we throw out the boring ones and we keep running the interesting ones. So, if our universe is a simulation, it's pretty likely that it only gets to keep running as long as it stays interesting. Which means our reality itself might be following a kind of narrative logic. So what does it mean if our entire universe is just optimized to tell a good story?